I was standing at the altar in my black tuxedo, watching 200 guests wait for the woman I loved. The church doors remained closed. The organist quietly repeated the same melody. Flowers lined every aisle. My mother smiled from the front row, convinced Skylar was only running late because she always tried to make a dramatic entrance. I smiled too. At least I tried to. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. One message. From Skylar. I'm not coming. I'm leaving with Jace. Don't call me again. For a few seconds, I forgot how to breathe. My fingers tightened around the phone. Surely it was a joke. A terrible joke. I called immediately. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Blocked. The room suddenly felt too small. Kai. My best man stepped closer. You okay? I couldn't answer. I simply handed him my phone. He read the message once. Then again. His face turned white. What happened? My mother asked from the front row. Nobody answered. Then every guest looked toward the entrance. Not because my bride had arrived. Because someone shouted from outside. Oh my God! The church doors opened. Several guests rushed toward the entrance. Confused murmurs filled the sanctuary. I followed them without thinking. Outside, a crowd had gathered near giant promotional screens rented for our wedding reception. Instead of displaying photos of Skylar and me, they were showing videos. Skylar, laughing, holding hands with Jace Carter. Then another clip, her kissing him outside Mercer Tower. Another, the two of them embracing inside a private elevator. Another, walking into a luxury hotel together. The crowd fell silent. Someone whispered, "That's Skylar Hayes." Another voice answered, "Isn't today her wedding?" Reporters appeared almost instantly. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted from every direction. A news alert flashed across the screen. CEO Skylar Hayes announces she has followed her heart. A pre-recorded interview began playing. Skylar looked directly into the camera. I've decided to stop living for expectations. She smiled. I'm choosing love. She reached for Jace's hand. I hope people understand. Understand? I stared at the screen in disbelief. She continued. I won't apologize for following my heart. Jace smiled proudly beside her. A reporter asked, "What about your fiancé?" Skylar hesitated only briefly. I wish Kai the best. That was all. 5 years together. A wedding planned for over a year. 200 guests waiting inside. And all I received was, I wish Kai the best. Someone touched my shoulder. It was my father. You don't have to stand here. I looked at him. His eyes held more pain than anger. I'm sorry, son. Those words almost broke me. My mother stepped outside moments later. She saw the screen. She saw the reporters. Then she saw me. Without saying anything, she wrapped her arms around me. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Everything inside me felt strangely empty. Guests slowly began leaving the church. Some offered quiet condolences. Others avoided eye contact completely. A few whispered among themselves. Poor guy. I can't believe she did this. What a humiliation. I heard every word. I wished I hadn't. One investor from my software company approached carefully. Kai, I forced myself to look at him. We'll postpone tomorrow's meeting. You don't have to. I insist. He hesitated. Take care of yourself. After he left, another executive quietly shook my hand. I'm sorry. Then another. And another. Each apology reminded me of what had happened. Not just that I'd been abandoned. That I'd been abandoned publicly. Deliberately. Like entertainment. Eventually the church became almost empty. The florist quietly removed and used bouquets. The musicians packed away their instruments. Workers folded chairs that no one had ever occupied for a wedding ceremony. I walked back inside one last time. The altar still waited beneath soft white flowers. Exactly where Skylar and I had planned to promise forever. I slipped my wedding ring from my pocket. I had picked it up that morning believing it would spend the rest of my life on my hand. Instead, it rested cold in my palm. I closed my fingers around it. Then I turned and walked away. No speeches. No dramatic farewell. Just silence. An hour later, I found myself sitting alone in a quiet cafe, several blocks from the church. I had changed into a plain jacket, but I still wore the tuxedo pants. I looked ridiculous. The waitress placed a coffee in front of me. You look like you've had a long day. I managed a tired smile. You could say that. She nodded kindly and walked away. For several minutes, I simply stared out the window. People hurried along the sidewalks. Cars passed. Life continued as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Maybe that was the hardest part. The world didn't stop just because mine had. The chair across from me suddenly moved. I looked up. A woman sat down without asking. She appeared to be about my age. Elegant navy suit. Calm expression. Confident eyes. She wasn't carrying a camera or a microphone. She didn't look curious. She looked certain. "I'm sorry," I said politely. "I think you have the wrong table." "I don't." Her voice was calm, measured. "I've been looking for you." I frowned. "Do I know you?" "No." She extended her hand. "My name is Zoe Bennett." I shook it automatically. "Kai Morgan." "I know." That caught my attention. She studied me for a moment. "You handled today better than most people would." "I don't think I handled it at all." "I disagree." I laughed quietly. "My fiancé left me at the altar." "I know." "Then you also know today isn't the best day for conversations with strangers. It might be the only day." I looked at her carefully. "What?" She reached into her bag and removed a business card. The name was familiar. Very familiar. Zoe Bennett, founder and majority owner of Bennett Dynamics, one of the fastest growing technology companies in the country. I looked back at her. "What are you doing here?" "I came to attend your wedding." My confusion deepened. "I don't remember inviting you." "You didn't." "Then why?" She smiled faintly. "Because I wanted to meet the man who built an entire software company without sacrificing his integrity." I blinked. "I'm not sure this is the right moment." "I think it's exactly the right moment." She folded her hands on the table. "I watched everything." "I'm sorry. You have nothing to apologize for." She held my gaze. Then she asked the one question I never could have imagined hearing. "If she doesn't want to marry you." She paused just long enough for my heart to stop. "Would you consider marrying me instead?" For several seconds, I simply stared at her, certain I had finally lost my mind. Because nothing else could possibly explain what I had just heard, I kept staring at Zoe Bennett, waiting for her to smile and admit it was some elaborate joke. She didn't. The cafe around us buzzed with quiet conversations, but everything else seemed to disappear. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "Could you repeat that?" She met my eyes without hesitation. "I asked if you'd consider marrying me." "You don't even know me." "I know enough." I laughed in disbelief. "My fiancé left me at the altar less than 2 hours ago." "I know. The entire country is watching me become a joke." "I know that too." I leaned back. "Then why would you ask something like this?" "Because I've spent years watching the way you build companies." I frowned. "What?" "You never chased headlines. You treated employees like partners. You refused investors who wanted control instead of collaboration." She smiled gently. "I admire that." I shook my head. "Admiration isn't a reason to marry someone." "No." She nodded. "But honesty is a place to start." I stayed silent. She continued. "I'm not asking for love." "Then what are you asking for?" "A chance." I folded my arms. "You make it sound simple." "It won't be." She looked out the window for a moment before speaking again. "My parents spent 30 years pretending they loved each other. They built a beautiful lie. I promised myself I'd never do that." She looked back at me. "If we're going to marry today." She paused. "Let's build trust first." Her words settled over me. No impossible promises. No dramatic declarations. Just trust. I asked quietly, "Why today?" She smiled. "Because I don't believe your life should be defined by someone else's betrayal." I didn't know how to answer. My phone buzzed again. "Mason." I answered. "Where are you?" "Coffee shop." You disappear after getting abandoned at the altar, and all you tell me is coffee shop. Despite everything, I almost smiled. "I'm with someone." "A reporter?" "No." "Then who?" I looked at Zoe. "A woman who just asked me to marry her." Silence. Then Mason laughed. "That's not funny." "I'm serious." Another silence. "I'll be there in 10 minutes." He hung up. Zoe smiled. "I like him already." "You've never met him." "I appreciate loyal people." 10 minutes later, Mason burst through the cafe door. He looked at me, then at Zoe, then back at me. "You weren't joking." "No." He pulled out a chair. "Somebody explain." Zoe introduced herself. Recognition spread across Mason's face. Wait. He blinked. You're Zoe Bennett? She nodded. The Zoe Bennett. I assumed so. Mason looked at me. Do you have any idea who this is? I do now. He rubbed his forehead. This day keeps getting stranger. For the next hour, Zoe answered every difficult question we asked. She never avoided one. She explained how she had quietly followed my company's progress for years, how she admired my refusal to compromise my principles, how she believed successful partnerships began with respect instead of emotion. Finally, Mason asked, "Do you actually expect this to work?" Zoe answered calmly, "I expect honesty." She looked at me. Everything else has to be earned. Something about that answer felt real. Not perfect, real. I took a slow breath. If we do this, she waited. There won't be any lies. Agreed. No games. Agreed. No pretending. She smiled. Agreed. I looked at Mason. He searched my face for several seconds. Then he nodded once. If anyone else asked you this today, I'd drag you out of here. He smiled slightly. But I don't think she's joking. No. I whispered. I don't think she is. By late afternoon, we stood inside a small courthouse. No flowers. No orchestra. No photographers. Just a quiet room with polished wooden benches. Judge Emily Ross smiled kindly as we entered. I've performed many weddings. She adjusted her glasses. I can honestly say this is one of the most unusual. I laughed softly. You're not wrong. Only a handful of people attended. Mason stood beside me. Two close friends of Zoe stood beside her. The room felt peaceful. Nothing like the chaos of the church. Judge Ross looked at both of us. Marriage isn't built in a single day. She folded her hands. It's built through thousands of ordinary choices. She smiled warmly. The ceremony is only the beginning. I looked at Zoe. She looked back at me. Not with overwhelming passion. Not with impossible expectations. With quiet certainty. Judge Ross asked, Kai Morgan, do you enter this marriage freely and honestly? I answered without hesitation. I do. She turned towards Zoe. Zoe Bennett. I do. We exchanged simple rings. No extravagant vows. No rehearsed speeches. I took her hand. I can't promise perfection. She smiled. I don't want perfection. I can promise honesty. Her eyes softened. That's exactly why I'm here. Judge Ross smiled. Then by the authority vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Zoe leaned forward and kissed me gently. The kiss wasn't dramatic. It was calm, respectful, a beginning. Outside the courthouse, one of Zoe's friends snapped a few photographs. Mason insisted on taking several more. You two actually look happy. I looked at Zoe. For the first time that day, I was. By evening, the photographs had reached social media. Nobody knew exactly how. They simply appeared. Software entrepreneur Kai Morgan marries investor Zoe Bennett hours after abandoned wedding. The story spread faster than anyone expected. Thousands of comments appeared within minutes. Many praised me for moving forward. Others called it unbelievable. Some refused to believe it was real. Across the city, Skylar sat inside her luxury apartment with Jace beside her. Jace looked up from his phone. Sky, she barely listened. What? I think you should see this. She frowned and took the phone. The headline filled the screen. Then the photographs. Me, standing beside Zoe, smiling, wearing a wedding ring. Skylar's expression froze. That's impossible. Jace shrugged. It looks official. She refreshed the page. More articles appeared. More photographs. More congratulations. No, she whispered. He wouldn't. She called my number. The call didn't connect. She tried again. Blocked. For the first time since walking away from our wedding, the confidence that had carried her through every decision began to crack. She had expected me to spend the day begging for another chance. Instead, I had started a completely different future without her. And somewhere deep inside, she finally realized something she had never considered. The man she thought would wait forever had already walked away. 3 days changed everything. Not because my heart had completely healed. It hadn't. But because the world that had celebrated Skylar's decision was beginning to see what came after it. I was sitting in my new office when Mason burst through the door carrying his tablet. You need to see this. I looked up from my laptop. What happened? He grinned. Karma. I raised an eyebrow. That's a dangerous word. Maybe. He placed the tablet in front of me. Every major business website carried the same story. Mercer Group faces internal review after confidential data leak. Another headline appeared beneath it. Board questions CEO's leadership following security breach. I frowned. What happened? Mason leaned against my desk. Jace. What about him? He leaked confidential company information. I stare at the screen. Intentionally? According to the preliminary investigation, yes. I slowly leaned back. The same man she left me for. Mason nodded. He promised to modernize her company. And instead, he copied client lists, internal projections, and product roadmaps. I looked out the window. Somehow I wasn't surprised. Someone knocked gently before opening the office door. Zoe stepped inside carrying 2 coffees. Good morning. She noticed Mason's expression. What did I miss? He handed her the tablet. She read quietly, then looked at me. How do you feel? I thought carefully before answering. I don't feel happy. No, I feel finished. She smiled softly. That's healthier. I accepted the coffee. Thank you. She sat across from me. Speaking of business, I laughed. That's a dangerous transition. It usually is. She slid a folder across the desk. I opened it. Investment agreements. Funding schedules. Expansion projections. I looked up. What is this? My company's investment. I blinked. This isn't a small investment. I know. I continued reading. The number made me stop breathing for a second. You want to invest this much? I do. Without controlling ownership? She nodded. You built something extraordinary. She folded her hands. I'd rather help you grow it than own it. I stared at her. Most investors don't think that way. I'm not most investors. I smiled despite myself. No, you really aren't. Over the next several days, everything moved faster than I had imagined. We hired engineers, expanded our research team, leased a larger development center. The AI platform I had once built alone inside a cramped apartment finally had the resources it deserved. Every milestone reminded me of something. Skylar had once looked at my prototype and laughed. It's clever. She had smiled politely. But it isn't the future. I believed her. I almost abandoned the project. Now Zoe stood beside me during every demonstration. Not because she understood every line of code. Because she believed in the person writing it. The difference changed everything. A week later, invitations arrived for the National Innovation Summit. Nearly every major technology company would attend. Zoe looked at the invitation. You want to go? I thought for a moment. I think it's time. The convention center buzzed with conversation. Executives greeted investors. Journalists interviewed founders. New technologies filled every exhibition hall. For the first time in months, I walked through a business event without hearing whispers behind my back. People smiled. They congratulated me. They asked about my latest research. It felt strange, almost unfamiliar. Zoe gently squeezed my hand. You earned this. Before I could answer, someone called my name. Kai. I turned slowly. Skylar stood only a few feet away. For a second, I barely recognized her. The confident woman who had walked away from our wedding was gone. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. Her posture sagged. She looked exhausted. She glanced at Zoe. Could I speak with Kai alone? I looked at Zoe. She nodded. I'll be nearby. After Zoe walked toward another exhibit, Skylar faced me again. You look well. So do you? She laughed bitterly. No, I really don't. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry. I waited. She looked down. I handled everything horribly. You did. I hurt you. You did. She nodded slowly. I've thought about that every day. I watched her carefully. Something felt different. Not the apology. The reason behind it. I asked quietly, why now? She looked surprised. What? Why apologize today? She hesitated, then sighed. The board. I remained silent. They're investigating me. I know. She looked embarrassed. Investors are leaving. I heard. Jace disappeared. I know. She swallowed hard. I don't know who to trust anymore. There it was. Not love. Need. She looked at me hopefully. You always knew how to fix impossible situations. I almost smiled. Kai. Her voice trembled. I need your help. Those 4 words answered every question I still carried. She wasn't apologizing because she had finally understood my pain. She was apologizing because her world was collapsing, and she remembered I used to save it. She reached toward my hand. I know I don't deserve another chance. I gently stepped back before she could touch me. This isn't about another chance. No, it's about consequences. A tear rolled down her cheek. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I believe you. Hope appeared in her eyes. Then I quietly continued. But believing that doesn't erase it. She lowered her hand. I never thought everything would fall apart. I know. I thought Jace loved me. I didn't answer. I thought I made the right choice. Still, I remained silent. She looked directly into my eyes. Can you forgive me? I thought about the altar, the message, the videos, the humiliation. Then I thought about Zoe, about honesty, about peace, about moving forward instead of backward. Finally, I smiled. Not cruelly, not triumphantly, simply with acceptance. I already have. Relief crossed her face. But forgiveness isn't the same as returning. The hope disappeared again. I nodded politely. I truly hope your life gets better. God. I looked toward Zoe waiting across the hall. My future is over there. Without another word, I walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. When I reached Zoe, she smiled. Everything okay? I slipped my hand into hers. It is now. Together we walked toward the stage where our company would soon introduce the technology everyone once doubted. Behind me, Skylar remained standing alone in the middle of the crowded convention hall. For the first time since she left me at the altar, she finally understood something no success, title, or apology could change. The greatest loss in her life wasn't the company she was struggling to save. It was the man she had only learned to value after he had already stopped waiting. The headlines changed faster than anyone expected. A month earlier, they had celebrated Skylar Hayes for choosing love over expectations. Now they called her story one of the biggest corporate scandals of the year. I sat in my office early one morning, reading the latest article on my tablet. Mercer Group removes CEO after financial disaster. Another headline appeared beneath it. Former intern vanishes with company funds and confidential files. Mason walked in carrying breakfast. I figured you'd be here. I usually am. He set the food on my desk. So, how do you feel? I looked at the screen one last time before locking it. I don't. He frowned. What does that mean? It means her life isn't my responsibility anymore. He smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. I leaned back in my chair. Did they really remove her? He nodded. The board voted unanimously. What about Jace? Nobody can find him. I let out a quiet breath. He played the same game with her that she played with me. Mason shrugged. Turns out betrayal doesn't stay loyal. Before I could answer, Zoe knocked lightly on the open door. You two talking business? Life, Mason replied. She smiled. That's usually harder. She walked over and placed another folder on my desk. Our headquarters renovation is finished. I looked up. Already? She nodded. The rooftop is finally open. I smiled. I've been looking forward to seeing it. She squeezed my shoulder gently. Come up when you're done. After she left, Mason watched me for a moment. She makes you peaceful. I looked toward the doorway where Zoe had disappeared. She does. You know what I like most about her? What? She never tries to become the center of your world. He smiled. She just walks beside you. I laughed softly. That's exactly who she is. Rain began falling late that afternoon. Large drops rolled down the windows of my office while engineers quietly finished their work outside. The building felt calm, alive. Everything I had once dreamed of was finally becoming real. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Come in. The door opened slowly. Skylar stepped inside. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked nothing like the woman who had walked away from our wedding. The expensive designer dresses were gone. The polished confidence had disappeared. She wore a simple gray coat damp from the rain. Her hair was tied back carelessly. She looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. I stood. Skylar. Hi. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure you'd see me. I wasn't sure either. She nodded. I understand. Silence settled between us. Then she slowly removed something from her coat pocket, a small velvet box. She placed it gently on my desk. I recognized it immediately. My engagement ring, the one I had given her the night I asked her to marry me. She opened the box. The diamond still caught the light exactly as it had that night. I should have returned this a long time ago. I looked at the ring, but didn't reach for it. Skylar stared at it quietly. I traded forever. Her voice cracked. For a fantasy. The words hung in the air. I finally looked at her. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She wasn't pretending anymore. She simply looked broken. I thought I knew what happiness looked like. A tear slipped down her cheek. I was wrong. I remained silent. She wiped her face quickly. I spent weeks blaming Jace. She laughed bitterly. It was easier than blaming myself. She looked directly at me. But he didn't make my choices. No, he only revealed them. Another tear followed. I threw away the only person who ever loved me without asking for anything in return. I shook my head gently. That's not true. She frowned. You gave me your trust. I paused. And trust is never nothing. She closed her eyes. I destroyed it. Yes. I destroyed us. Yes. She nodded slowly, accepting every answer. Then she asked the question I had expected since she walked through the door. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at the ring resting between us. Months earlier, I would have answered through anger. Now I answered with peace. I already did. She looked up hopefully. I continued before she could speak. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want my old life back. The hope faded from her expression. I know. I gently pushed the ring box back toward her. You should keep it. She looked confused. I don't want it. It isn't mine anymore. Neither of us touched it. Finally, she closed the box and slipped it back in her pocket. I kept thinking that if I apologized enough. She smiled sadly. Somehow everything would become what it used to be. It can't. I know. She took a slow breath. I'm glad you found someone who sees you the way I should have. I smiled. So am I. For the first time, she smiled back. It was small, fragile, but genuine. I hope you're happy, Kai. I am. She nodded once. Good. Without another word, she turned toward the door. She didn't ask me to stop her. She didn't ask for another chance. She simply walked away. Just before reaching the hallway, she paused. I'm sorry. I know. Then she disappeared. Forever. I stood quietly for several moments before taking the elevator to the rooftop. The rain had stopped. The clouds were beginning to break apart. Zoe stood near the edge of the building, watching the first light spread across the city. She turned as I approached. Everything okay? I slipped my hand into hers. It is now. She studied my face. You said goodbye. I did. She nodded gently. Was it difficult? Less than I expected. We stood together in comfortable silence as the horizon slowly turned gold. Below us, our employees began arriving for another day of building something meaningful. Not just a company, a future. I looked at Zoe. Thank you. She smiled. For what? For showing me that love doesn't have to be earned through suffering. She squeezed my hand. It never should. The sun finally rose above the skyline. Warm light covered the rooftop. For a long time, I had believed losing Skylar was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. Standing beside Zoe, I finally understood the truth. Sometimes life doesn't take away the person you're meant to spend forever with. Sometimes it removes the person who is standing in the way. I hadn't won because Skylar lost everything she chose over me. I had won because I chose self-respect over resentment, truth over revenge, and a future built on trust instead of fear. And in losing the wrong person, I had finally made room for the right one.